Hey everyone, my name is Hans Dekker, and I really like cold email. And in this video, I will be reviewing one of my favorite cold email tools called Apollo. Now, over the past six and something years, I've been working with cold email. I've been sending a lot of cold emails. I've been writing a lot of cold emails, and I've built currently two businesses just completely around and on cold email. So, as you can imagine, over those years, I've tried out a tool or two, and giving me a lot of information on what works, what doesn't work, and which tools are probably the best for you to use. So what I'll do today is I'll go through Apollo, I'll review Apollo, I will show you what it looks on the inside, I will go a little bit more in depth on some of the functions that they have so that you'll either know whether Apollo is the right choice for you, or you'll get a chance to get more out of Apollo than what you're currently doing. So we'll start right here on the Apollo website. This one, I mean, if you're considering Apollo, you've probably seen this already. No, I mean, there's not too much to say around here about this. So as you can see, they have a lot of options. They have their database option, which works with their LinkedIn extension, meaning that you can prospect directly from LinkedIn or from LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So we'll show you the database in a minute. Then they also have, so they have the LinkedIn option, they have the database, they have enrichment options, and a few other cool options that we'll touch on later. And they also have a sales automation option, meaning that you can set up campaigns with A/B testing and all that good stuff, but also with additional touch points in there. So you'll have a dialer directly in Apollo that you can use, or your sales reps can use. And they have account-based marketing or account-based automation options. Then they have analytics when it comes to either your prospects or your team, how they're performing. And that's basically what we can get from their front page. And then, of course, very important is pricing. So they do have a free plan, which you might have checked out already. Then they've structured their pricing pretty smart. I mean, no one is going to go for basic. If for a few bucks extra, you can get unlimited email credits, which technically they say unlimited, but it means 100,000. So after you've extracted 100,000 emails, they require you to add a new seat, a new user, however you want to call it. So there's a little side note, but then again, I mean, 100,000 is still pretty good. Then you'll get 50 mobile numbers. Now, as I said, I've tried a lot of tools, and in my experience, Apollo are among the most accurate when it comes to finding the right mobile phone number, especially in North America. I've also tried them out in Europe, but on a really small sample size, where they were pretty accurate as well. So if mobile phone numbers or direct dials are important to you, then Apollo definitely seems to be a very good option to you. So that's about pricing. I mean, here's a full plan comparison when it comes to like the number of sequences that you could use. And after you get out of the free plan, I mean, there aren't too many restrictions. It's just that there are a few main restrictions that apply even when you sign up for like the professional, the unlimited plan. And we'll touch on that next. So for that, we need to log in. Then here's the insight. So this is this sales rep cockpit. Now, if you're managing a team, this could be very useful to you because we'll show you the exact stats. Now, as you can see, I'm not either calling or emailing from Apollo, and I will tell you why in a little bit. For calling, it's actually really good, and it will show you an exact breakdown of which rep is dialing how many numbers, how many emails they're sending. It will show you statistics, and it's a great overview for you to have if you're managing multiple users or seats within here. And you can switch to like your sales manager cockpit. And as you can see, there were a few campaigns that I've set up in the past. A few dials have been made, and you can see it as a breakdown per user. Then it also show you like how many calls connected, and it goes pretty deep into the statistics that you can see. Now, Then when you go, I will start with the settings because I think those in this case are the most important. But there are a few other things like you have more in-depth analytics where you can draft your own reports. You can set up email sequences that you can set them up here. So this is one of the main things that I get asked about when people sign up for Apollo. You get 3 seats. You can basically add 3 G Suite or whichever inbox you're using. You can add those to Apollo, and then you can use those to send emails. But there's a big side note that goes with that, so we'll touch on that in a second. So we'll start with the settings here. Nothing too exciting. You can update your email sending limits. Then you can get some notifications as to your reminders. Maybe if you set up tasks, or if you're managing your CRM in here, you can get reminders about tasks that you still need to carry out. And then when you're using the Gmail Chrome extension, you can actually enable email tracking from there. So whenever you send like a follow-up through email, you can see whenever someone opened the follow-up. They have the send later option and templates, which is pretty solid as well, just to really optimize your workflow there. Then now would be a good time to jump into email sending limits, which is the biggest but with Apollo. So you can add. So this is my main email address. You can add it here. Then you can set up 24-hour sending limits. You can send max emails per hour, and you can set the minimum delay between hours. So the only thing is that the minimum delay between hours and seconds, you cannot set that higher than 90 seconds. Now, what that means is regardless of this number, so if this would be 2, so it would only send 2 emails per hour, it would still send them out 90 seconds after each other. Now, I found over the years with testing, and like I said, I've tested pretty much any tool, any delay pretty much, and 90 seconds isn't ideal. Like ideally, unless you have a very aged domain and a lot of positive interaction, and you're you know 100% sure that, hey, listen, this is set up how it needs to be set up, then you can most definitely get away with higher volume, smaller intervals, etc. Just generally speaking, it is much better practice to have a higher interval. So for example, on most of my campaigns, I have an interval of at least 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes, one email goes out, and that happens for like 8-9 hours. I mean, of course, for some like clients or campaigns, it just makes sense to have, because you've seen over time, okay, listen, these people, they're online between 8 and 10 in the morning, and after that they're busy. So you want to have all your emails go out between 8 and 10. So in that case, you know what, that's a different scenario. But generally speaking, if you want to optimize for open rates, then you want to make sure that the delay between your emails is more than 90 seconds. So I will show you what the open rates looked like when using Apollo. And then we can compare those with, you know, the exact same setup that I was using with a different sender, and I will let you know what the statistic looked like. So what the difference was between open rates there. Then one other important, I'm just going to move my head here a little bit. One other important bit that goes into it is the tracking subdomain. So they do offer the option to set up a custom subdomain, so custom tracking domain. However, you need to be on a custom plan. Now, you have the unlimited plan, which gives you access to pretty much anything. But then with a custom plan, you get API access. Then you can export big searches at once, which is something I will touch on later when we review the people section, so the actual database. And it will give you the option to add tracking subdomains, which I believe is a little bit bad practice. I'm not sure, but I do feel like tracking subdomains is a very, very basic feature that they most definitely should provide to any of their users, because I can hardly imagine it puts a lot of strain on their backend, on their servers, and for the users, it just really increases deliverability. And if they would allow me that option, then I might be all in on Apollo. But right now, I'm still using different tools for email sending. So, in my opinion, that's something that the tracking subdomains should probably move to regular futures that anyone on a paid plan has access to. And that is the main reason for me why I'm not using their sequences, just because deliverability is so poor. So I will show you the actual sequences and the open rates in just a second. Now, just to quickly go through the other configurations that you have here. So you can set different stages for your contacts. So you can manage the database that you have with your team. So you can make sure that you don't reach out to the same people twice, and you can really easily follow along which person is in which stage. And then you can set up like certain triggers to do it automatically. So when an email is delivered, it automatically will change the stage too. Which is pretty solid. Like, this saves you a lot of time, and the to have this all centralized into one tool, I think is really, really, really attractive. So you really keep things centralized. There you can set up your automations here, which just make sure that you minimize the amount of manual work that needs to be done. And you may also make sure that if you're managing multiple reps, that you don't need to make sure that they do their work. You just set this up once, and then you don't need to chase your reps and make sure that they actually set those stages, etc. So this is definitely something that is very interesting, and that is a great future for a lot of teams. And then you can also set up your custom contact fields. Then same goes for accounts. So you have contacts, which is Bill Gates at Microsoft, and then the account will be Microsoft. And then you can also set different stages there, and you can set triggers as well. So then you don't reach out to the same account if they're a current client or whatever. Then opportunities, the same. So you have your opportunity pipeline right here. And you can set different fields and different stages right here so that you can manage opportunities that you've created. Then for calls, this is something that we already saw earlier. You have certain triggers, and you can set stages for people. And this is a great way for reps to let you know what the status is of the calls. Then you can set up personas, which is pretty interesting, especially if you're managing, a large team, or you're going after different areas within your market. So you can set up a new persona saying, hey, you know what, these are the sales leaders. And then that way you can apply it as a filter when you're looking for people. You could say to a sales rep, hey, you guys, this week I've put a new persona in Apollo. Make sure that you grab those prospects that belong to that persona, and then you go after those. And that makes it really easy for a sales leader to manage a team. You set up the persona, and you tell them, hey, this is your persona, this is who you go after. And then everything gets automatically managed and updated. Then these are the schedules that you can set when it comes to calling or to actual sending, etc., which I think a pretty cool option that they have here is to skip like national holidays, etc. So nothing too exciting here, but it's a pretty cool option that they have here, that you can skip the holidays. Then when it comes to sequences, you can set up rule sets. So to say that, imagine you reach out to Bill Gates at Microsoft and to his colleague as well. So if one of them replies, make sure that we stop the entire sequence to the entire account, which in most cases makes a lot of sense. Just maybe not in all cases, at least they give you the option. And then this automation right here I think is really, really killer. So I've actually set that up through Zapier on a different platform, where if someone is clearly showing interest, you can set up a phone test saying, "Hey, listen, you've clearly European interact." Well, that's probably a bit awkward to say, but when someone is clearly interacting with your content, or they're passing the email around. So you can basically usually tell, like, hey, this one's been opened 9 times. They've probably forwarded to someone, and then you can follow up because there's clearly interest in what it is you're presenting. One small side note is that some spam filters also trigger this. So sometimes you will see this email was opened, I don't know, 100 times, and then usually it's a spam filter just looking at the content and seeing what is up with it. But that is such a small percentage that you can get away with automation like this, which I think is a really good option to have, a really good trigger to have. Then they have a few extra options here, and then other settings. So the maximum amount of emails sent per 24-hour rolling period, which I assume is on a sequence level, but it could also be that it's on a contact level. Make sure that you don't send, to the same contact twice within a day. But I'm assuming it's on a sequence level, but I'm not sure if this would override your general settings that you would set on your user level, like your email account level. Then, a few more for options here. I'm not going to get too deep into each option. But these, like here, for example, so they have a funding events trigger or filter for prospects that you can use for people, and you can set that to, I don't know, if you set that to like the last 7 days, then you can see companies that have been funded or received funding or have funding events in the last 7 days, which might make your approach more relevant. Or you can use that for personalization, saying, hey, I noticed that, you just got funded last week, which, a lot of companies are using this, saying, you know what, like the second the company brings out funding news, then they'll reach out and say, hey, buy my product. So it might make sense to say, hey, you know what, we'll go with 30 days. And then we'll go a little bit easy, because these people, after the news goes out, they receive tons and tons of emails, and then we'll just make sure that we'll just approach them a little bit later with something even more relevant. Whatever works for you, at least now you have the option. Then when it comes to finding people or companies, they have Apollo has an option to filter for job postings. You could say, okay, I want to see companies who have at least 10 openings for SDR roles, because then I can pitch them my outsourcing services. But maybe you only have reps available, I don't know, in a certain location, maybe in Los Angeles, for example. So you can set that here as well, so that you can only see like local jobs, so people looking for SDRs in LA, and then you can say, hey, I have 10 SDRs right here in my LA office, and they're ready to go, for example. So you can actually set that up right here. Then integrations, they integrate with, Apollo integrates with Salesforce, HubSpot, SendGrid, Outreach, and SalesLoft. So if you're using Outreach for your outreach, then Apollo is definitely a good option. Same goes for SalesLoft, where you then bypass that option to use the sequences of Apollo, but you do use their data, and their data is really, really good. So that makes for a good combination. Then there's, Salesforce and HubSpot, not going to get too deep into those. Same goes for Salesforce and HubSpot. You, of course, have sequencing options right here that you could use. And the API is only for custom plan users for which you need to contact Apollo. They will set up a call, and they will run you through the pricing that is associated with that. Then SendGrid, just to touch on that really quickly. So you can, if you have a SendGrid account, you can link that to Apollo, and then, emails go out through SendGrid, which isn't best practice. You can really ramp up the volume. It isn't best practice because, one, it's against terms of service of SendGrid. You need a clear opt-in, so they basically are only for like opted-in messaging. And second, it will have like send through SendGrid in like the header of your email. So it looks a little bit silly as well, in my personal opinion. It definitely looks like a cold email. So I would never go for this. However, if you're already using SendGrid for your cold emails, then hey, it might be a good option for you. Then, just to make sure that you're not breaking any laws, then you have some option when it comes to GDPR. Then just to save yourself time, whenever you find someone on LinkedIn, for example, you can tell it to automatically also grab their mobile phone number or request their mobile phone number. So these are all just some great time saving options. Well, some good options in general. So you don't have to set your filters like, hey, I don't want anyone from the EU. And then this is actually a great time saver if you're doing a lot of cold calling. And then a few more rules there. Then the rules engine. Honestly, this is not something that I've used too much. And I couldn't honestly tell you too much about the rules that they have here. However, it might be something that's interesting to you. In the years that I've been using it, this has never come up. But I'll see if I can actually explore that. And then when it comes to scoring models, I mean that's pretty powerful when you have like your entire company in here, and you're saying, you know what, if a company has these characteristics, then they're a better prospect. Or if, for example, if there have been this many touch points, and if they're in this stage, then the score of their company, so the likeliness of them to convert or the likeliness of them being an ideal client, is higher. And then you'll put more emphasis on approaching them or reaching out to them. And you can set up different scoring models around that for that to be automated. So again, it has a lot of really great options for you to really centralize everything. And once you have everything, like your rules and your scoring models, everything set up, then you can save yourself a lot of time. And then if you decide to upgrade to the higher plan, so the custom plan, then with the tracking subdomain, then you might be able to get decent deliverability as well. Which brings me to the sequences. So as I mentioned, open rates aren't great with Apollo, which made me not use their sequences. So here are the open rates from some campaigns that I ran in 2020, so some are last year. And as you can see, the open rates just really aren't there. So here's one small campaign with a somewhat decent open rate, but definitely not something that I would want to work with. So now, as I said, this is mainly because of how they're sending emails, and because they don't offer the tracking subdomains for most people unless you're on a custom plan. Then when the same setup, so the same domain that I have here and the same inboxes then that I have here, I later use them on, for example, Lemlist or Wavo, or on different tools that offer different ways of sending emails. And there I got like 80-90% plus open rate over the same sample size. So as you can see, like if your setup is correct, then still with Apollo, your open rates are very likely to not be good enough. And to have like a 30% or a 20% open rate really isn't worth it to me, especially if maybe your target market is a bit smaller. It just makes for a lot of work that just basically isn't worth it. I mean, it is great to have everything centralized, and you can just basically add your prospects directly from Apollo into your sequence. So you're saving some time there that you're now losing by grabbing your data and bringing it into a different tool. But you're just making much better use of the data, and you're making things a lot easier for yourself in terms of the amount of leads that you're booking, instead of having to send thousands and thousands of emails just to have a couple hundred people open it. If you just export the data from Apollo, use a different tool, then you can get a much higher open rate, and again make things easier for yourself. Or hey, upgrade to a custom plan, get the tracking subdomains, and see how much of a difference that makes. In my experience, it does. Like, for example, right now I'm testing a setup with a custom tracking subdomain against one without one, and the difference in open rates is around 20%. So without the tracking subdomain, without the custom tracking subdomain, I'm getting around a 40 to 50% open rate, while with a custom tracking domain, I'm getting 60 to 80%. So there's definitely a difference there. then with a tracking domain, it might actually be very interesting to use Apollo, because there's definitely something to be said for having everything centralized and just saving yourself a lot of time that way. Makes for much better of an overview, and especially if you're managing like multiple teams, then it can actually save you hours per week. But it's just a bit of a trade-off that you're gonna have to make, and you're gonna have to see what is more important to you. Then opportunities, I have nothing set up here because I don't use Apollo as a CRM. But the best part is that it again saves you from a lot of manual data entry, because Apollo has basically everything there is to find on an account. So you can get an account from their company database. It goes into here, so you can create a new opportunity, and you have all the information right there. Just makes it a lot easier. So then, for example, let's say you go with Microsoft and you call it Microsoft. um, it has all the information on Microsoft already, so you can just easily look it up from one tool, instead of maybe having to add certain things as notes, or maybe to trying to find, if you really want to follow them and maybe reach out in a relevant way after they've gone cold for a little bit, then you don't need to do a lot of manual searching, which is something that I personally don't like, because hey, it takes a lot of time to update your pipeline and your CRM. So again, if you have that centralized in here, then you can actually manage things a lot easier. Then for the actual database, probably what you guys have been waiting for. So they have 210 plus million business contacts that they have available for you, which include verified emails, direct mobile numbers. You can grab them from here, drop them into a sequence that you have set up here, or you can export them as CSV. So how updated is their data? It's pretty accurate. Like the other day, I made a change on LinkedIn. I changed the job title or company, I think, on my profile, and within, I think, 2 weeks, it was actually updated, was reflected in Apollo as well. So they're definitely constantly updating their data when it comes to job titles and relevancy. Now, of course, when reaching out, I still sometimes get people saying, "Hey, listen, this person is no longer here," or "Hey, this isn't relevant at all anymore." That's something that you're always going to have, but on like, the changes, that the job changes, etc., they're reflected pretty quickly in Apollo. Then when it comes to actual filters, so when it comes to data accuracy, you can actually set more or less set it up here. So you could say, I own, like, if it goes for guest emails, so how they would guess that, for example, if Bill Gates at Microsoft, his email address would be Bill at Microsoft, then they're going to assume that Hans Decker at Microsoft, his email is going to be Hans at Microsoft. So they guess like the structure of the email, and then maybe have like a really simple verification in place. Or maybe they say, you know what, we have 1,000 emails at that account with this structure, so our confidence level is a lot higher that the structure is correct. And then you can actually set up like a few filters when it comes to the email status or confidence. So maybe saying, hey, I only want verified emails, and as you can see, then their amount of records goes down quite a bit. But I mean, 30 million is still fairly decent. Then I do still verify each and every email that I pull out of Apollo, just because, I mean, bounce rate is super vital to have that as low as you possibly could have it. So I'd like to have it at the very most at 2%. So honestly, I don't have the numbers ready right now as to how many emails are being filtered out when I have this set up. But it's definitely quite a few, so it's definitely worth still using your Blaze Verify or whatever for double verification. Same goes for phone status or confidence. You can that works the same way. Then so there are a lot of filters that you have here. I mean, it goes as deep as SIC codes. and recent funding, etc., etc. So what I think is most interesting to most people are like your keywords, company keywords, technologies, etc. And they have suggestions. So maybe you're an email marketing agency, you want to work with e-commerce stores, then you could say, hey, listen, all businesses or all businesses that have Shopify, that use Shopify on their website, those are the ones that I want to reach out to, but only the ones that are in the United States and from which the company is also located in the US. So there's the contact location, account location. Those are two different things. Just here, remember how we touched on that persona earlier. So you can just have your persona right here. So that basically these are the same filters that you would see on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, just a little bit more advanced. So their filters definitely are super interesting, and really make them, in my opinion, the better tool to use for finding data. So if you want to go after startups, you could maybe say companies that have been founded no earlier than 2017. I mean, you have Alexa ranked languages, recent funding. So you can see, even when it comes to the funding round type, you have a lot of options. You could say, hey, I don't want seed. Companies that have announced the seed round, or whatever works for you. So there's a lot of there. You have a lot of options there. Job postings. So you have like jobs located at. You have like the actual titles that they're hiring for, but you also have the active amount of job postings. Maybe if you're running a recruitment agency or an outsourcing agency, you could say, hey, companies that have like 100 job postings, those are very, very interesting accounts to me because there's a lot of work there. So those would be the accounts that we go after first. Then, I mean, this is, your engagement activity. So if you're using the sequences here, you can filter in or out contacts that have interacted with your emails already. Or if you have imported your data from CSV, you can filter for that right here. So those are the filters that you have, and I will just show you like what that looks like on here. So maybe if you just pull up like all the US data, and as you can see, these are the people right here, and you can click into them and you can see information on the actual person. So Mitch Copeland in this case, a United Valve. You can see company information, revenue information, keywords right here, their address, and then often has a public phone number as well, and a description right here. So an SEO description, and I'll actually show that right here where you can say company keywords, which is a really cool filter that I find myself using almost every time I put together a list. So you could say I want to include keywords, include all keywords. So e-commerce, fashion, for example, or e-commerce or fashion, or etc., etc. Or you can exclude keywords saying e-commerce, fashion, but not marketing. So I don't want to target other marketing agencies who say, hey, we are a marketing agency for e-commerce fashion companies, for example. Then here is a show advanced option, meaning that it can actually search in their company, their SEO description, their social media description, the social media tags, or the company name. So, I mean, all of this combined makes for pretty cool filtering. So then when you're saying, hey, I want all companies that have something to do with e-commerce, and then you have your contacts right here. Then the difference here, like total, net new, or saved. Now, basically, these are all the contacts that match this description. These are the ones that I have had nothing to do with yet, and then these are the ones that I've added to a list, for example, or that have a different stage rather than net new. So maybe I've added them to a list for myself or client, and then they no longer show up under net new. So that's a great way to see. Just make sure that you're working with new contacts. Now, what you can do from here. So imagine this would be a search that would be relevant to me that I would like to add to either sequence here or away from here. So you can select all of them. You can select the page, and then you see a few more options here. Now, so you can say, okay, I want to extract 1,000 and at most 2 companies per person. However, that is something that is only for users on a custom plan. So if you're on their unlimited plan for $100 a month, then what you'll have to do is you will need to go through every page. You need to select the page. You can then either add them to a sequence, these people. So here you can see how fast your workflow could actually be. If you say, I only want verified emails, then you put together a list, and then you add these people to a sequence right here by adding, by finding a sequence. So that makes for a pretty interesting workflow. That really makes for a fast workflow, which is something that I definitely like. But as I said, their verified emails still make for a fairly high bounce rate. Plus, the open rate on the sequences isn't great. If you're a little bit, strapped for resources and you don't have a lot of time, then it's definitely a trade-off that you could make, where you would say, hey, listen, we'll go with this. It's super fast. We'll definitely get a bunch of leads per month, and it will save me more time to do other stuff. Or you can go with a custom plan, where you have a custom tracking domain, or maybe you have other things set up to make sure that your deliverability is even better, and then you can actually add them to the sequence from here, and you can get decent open rates, and you can save yourself a lot of time. Then what you could also do is you could add these people to a list. So imagine you want to export all these 599,000. First of all, it only shows 100 pages of 25, the same as LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which I don't believe is a coincidence. I think the database is really built on top of LinkedIn or LinkedIn Sales Navigator. But so it will only show the first 2,500. Then you can add all of those to a list, where you would either find the list that you've made before, or you create a new list. Then you add them to a list, and then those will be added to a list. You go to the next page, and you basically do the same like here on the next page. Actually, for that list to show up that you just created, you will need to refresh first before it will show up. You do the same thing. You add them to that same list. You go to page 3, you do the same thing, and that's how you would work with that database right here. So you don't have to actually, do an export for each and every page. Then if you would click list right here, which I'm not going to do because there might be some client info in there. But if you go to lists right there, you can then export the list from there, and you will receive it in your email. Make sure that you check if it's the correct list, because sometimes they send the wrong list, especially if you're working a bit fast, like with a lot of lists in a row. Then every now and then they send the previous list, because maybe the old list isn't updated yet or whatever. So make sure that you check in that actual file that it's the correct list, and then you're good to work with that. And then basically all the fields that you can see here, they have those. So in the export, there's the industry, the keywords of that company, amount of employees, revenue information. So almost all the filters that you have here, they will also be reflected in the CSV export. So that is really complete and really good data. And just how easy it is to work with it, all the filters that you have with the technology, with the keywords, with the revenue. So you can say, I want startups, but not the ones that are already doing 100 million a year, just to make sure that they're not too big. Then with their job postings, with technologies that you're using, industries that they're in, where you have your options right here. I mean, everything together. These are the best filters that I've seen on any tool that I've used over the past 6-7 years. So they're really easy to work with. You can really make a really solid list. You can get really clear insights into just how big your market is. And then you can just export them from here and use them for your campaign. You can do a lot of digging on the companies and just see what there is available on these companies. You can see there's a lot of information in general. If there are So let me just pull this up. So as you can see, there's also a lot of like all the social links for those companies. The ones that they can find are also available right here, like a Crunchbase, LinkedIn, their actual website, their Facebook, and the Twitter, etc., etc. So basically, the info that is out there on the companies, Apollo is very likely to have it. So if you're looking just for a really complete data set, then Apollo could really be your best option. Then to briefly, saved searches is one final thing I want to touch on here. If this, for example, you would say, you know what, all the C-suite titles at smaller companies in the it's not working with me. So in the agriculture industry, these are all great for me. Then you can actually save that search. So you could save it right here, and then you can come back to the search later, or you can say to your SDR, hey, this search that I've saved, you can work with that one. So that's how saved searches can also save you a lot of time. Same goes for companies. So you have a few different filters, fewer filters that will allow you to filter for companies, but it will give you an overview of the actual account level data of your market. So when you go with people, you can see the entire spectrum of people that are within your target market. If you want to know, hey, how many companies are actually in there, that you can use the companies filter, and it will just have like a few different fields right here, and you can then just really look into accounts that might be interesting to you. So those are the most important things to go over when it comes to the actual data that Apollo uses. So as I said, just to quickly recap, Apollo is one of the very best tools, especially when it comes to the price quality option that you have there. They're one of the very best tools that I've found over the past 7 years. Their sequences aren't great. Your open rates are not going to be great. So there's definitely something to keep in mind. However, there is definitely a trade-off that you could make just because of the insane amount of time that Apollo could save you if you decide to centralize everything into Apollo with all the rules and all the setup and the actual CRM that you have in here and all the data that they already have in here that you don't have to manually enter. The option to manage multiple reps, the option to see how they're performing on their calls, and just all those options make Apollo a really good option. There's just one really big but, which is open rates of your actual sequences, which is definitely something that you would like to keep in mind. So that's my Apollo review. Hopefully you will find it useful. If that is the case, let me know. Or if you would like me to review a different tool that you're having, that there's an option for you to maybe pick from, let me know. I'll be happy to review it because chances are I've already used it. So thanks for watching and have a great day.